Okay, bonjour mes amis, my name is Freya and welcome to Growing My Grandpa. I don't normally play scary games on this channel, but I saw it, and it was either like free or cheap, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Okay, let's get started. Would you like to view the tutorial? Yes, please. Week 1. I excused Adrian during music class today and spoke with her about her recent string of demerits. It was our first time meeting outside of our quarterly evaluations, and I believe it went well. I can certainly understand Mrs. Richardson's classroom observations concerning Adrian's emotional state. She was, of course, intensely shy when we first met. As I understand it, she is similarly withdrawn in her classroom activities and only speaks or acts when she absolutely must. Some things she simply will not do. Instead of participating in mandatory group activities, she will sit alone and accept that she will receive a demerit. Before the meeting, I read Mrs. Richardson's parent-teacher report, which allowed me to estimate some about Adrian's home life. The parents are well educated and come from a prestigious background, but they lack time to properly nurture Adrian. She is often alone, and when she is not, the parents seem to not understand the importance of warmth and affirmation when dealing with someone so young. Having two parents of this reserved and icy temperament exacts an inhibition in a child. The child's imagination is subdued, but only ostensibly, for it eventually finds its way into regular life. I surmised that I would be able to reach out to Adrian by way of make-believe. Hi, Adrian. How are you liking your new house? You've told me that you used to live close by, but it can still be a big adjustment. New room, a new school. The basement. I like that. The basement? Yeah, well, there's a lot of cool stuff. Mom and Dad sent me down there. Your mom and Dad made you go? Yeah, but there's lots of cool stuff. Well, that's not why they sent me down there, though. Why did they send you down there? Fighting. They were fighting, shouting. I came in to help and they shouted at me. They said go clean up downstairs, so I went. It sounds tough. Do they fight a lot? No. Well, It's alright, Adrian. Maybe you can tell me more about the basement instead. Okay, well, it was weird at first, the stuff down there, but cool. I found something living, sort of. That's very interesting, Adrian. Please, tell me more. By indulging her in her fantasies and stories, I was able to glean more of an understanding of Adrian's anxiety surrounding her home and parents. The symbols of Adrian's story seem to carry their own traumatic weight. Her exploration of the basement may very well be a vehicle for the conveyance of her anxiety. Whatever might come out of our next meeting, whether she will engage in similar make-believe, I will set down her story here. Am I a therapist? That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this. Adrian's story begins with her delving into the basement with a trash receptacle and the goal of cleaning up. She discovered one of the walls was covered in plastic bags. She went to investigate, intent on tearing away whatever they covered. Upon removing the plastic trash bags from the wall, she noticed their interior lining was covered in glass. Like a window, I offered. No, she said, like a mirror. Reflecting inward toward the animal they covered. I gently asked her what exactly this animal was. Here's where the material reality of the story took a turn for the explicitly fantastic and imaginary. Upon her discovery of it, at her gaze, it grew, or extended, its shaggy-haired self. Hair like the fur of a dog, I offered. No, she said. Not the fur of a dog, nor the hair on her head. It grew out towards her, the animal's hair reaching out. It was hard, standing almost straight like the hair on a brush. A bristle, I offered. Yes, she said. She was very afraid at first, but then very curious. I asked her what else was in the room. More things hidden away, she said. Things of Grandpa's as well. First, she found a hidden passage under the stairs. Inside were strange dolls, magic objects, naked, faceless figures. I heard these cryptic utterances and merely nodded. In order to keep the game of make-believe going, I only pressed for details where I thought necessary. The faceless dolls could be a simple metaphor for the anonymity she feels in her own home. The hidden passage, I am unsure what to make of that. The revealing of the concealed seems to be thematic in her fantasy. The door under the stairs is but one example. The darkness of the shadowy corner unnerves you. You cannot explore here without some form of light. Once she removed the panel and found the magical hidden passage, she was very specific about what she took. She found a magic book, a magic doll, a photo of her late grandpa, and magic glue. A slouching doll. Its material is rough and coarse. Eurasian steppe shamanism and the fusiform gyrus, an interdisciplinary study in sympathetic magic, a dissertation by Jacob Hart. The impetus of this research was the recognition of a particular pattern in fragments of documents relating to magic and magico-religious practices. Numerous sources were drawn from commentaries on laws relating to the banning of sorcery and necromancy, compilations of folk charms relating to love spells, hagiographs of saints and their encounters with devils. The list spans many centuries and a great distance, from the Levant to the Khazar Khaganate, to the border of the modern nation-states of Russia and Kazakhstan today. From this paper trail arose a consistent account about a certain form of magic relating to the binding of demons to a sorcerer's will. A demon called the Heaven of Needles, or the Angel of Needles, was known to be kept best by shamanic keepers, or wards who suffer from face blindness, whether by birth or through developmental causes like stroke or head injury. It was known to be extremely effective but terribly dangerous, so much so that it became outlawed several times and was generally a popular scapegoat relating to unexpected death. Oh my god, there's so much. Oh. I thought there was going to be a lot more pages. Oh well, I skipped the last one. All-purpose glue. Hello. I don't know what to do from here. I'm assuming the trash pile's got something to do with it, but I can't find anything that I can interact with. Oh. Huh. All clean. The space will not be dirty again until next week. Yay. Ah, photo of my late grandfather. Mr. PhD! On the reverse side of the photograph there is more text. Good luck on your trip to the Urals. Stay warm. I interrupted to ask what she did with these magical, mysterious materials. Grow, Grandpa, she explained plainly, and then without missing a beat she continued on with her story. Feeling this was a potent symbol, I stopped her again to ask what she meant. Somewhat puzzled, I did not understand immediately. She explained slowly. Grandpa lives in the cage in the other room, the cage behind the door. They grew people in the cage. I'm assuming that, this thing is that, angel/demon of needles they were talking about. Note on an experiment. The sample's exposure to some of our neuronal activity is unavoidable. However, the speed at which its desirous yield is produced can be dampened by several precautions regarding libidinal and emotional urges. Keep conversation not related to lab work to a minimum. If you begin to suspect you are developing attachments to your colleagues, contact me as soon as possible. That's frightening. Oh, okay, there were 4. For the sake of university policy and the health of any future career you hope to have, you will abide by the non-disclosure contract you have signed. Do not break the anthropoidic vacuum without my prior consultation and approval. Any anthropoidic forms brought into the enclosure area must not be left unattended. When not in dormancy, the sample will attempt to take anthropoid shells. Please see shell notes for more info on that. Oh, heck. I didn't mean to click away from that one. Regarding growth cycles, every time Whiskers regenerates and leaves dormancy, it is to be logged as a new propagation. The sample's bodily existence cannot be illegible. A part cannot be cut from the whole, so there can only be one living propagation. Propagations are to be terminated after 5 weeks. Any further development puts us at risk. Termination procedures will be posted and followed with extreme care. With all that out of the way, I want to welcome you to the project. I look forward to working with you. Dr. Hart. Okay. I feel like I missed something from skipping that 3rd card, but I don't actually know how to open my inventory. A hastily written note. I've repeatedly called your homes to no avail, and so I'm forced to leave this here for you all. I found William sitting in the corner of the enclosure area, seeming severely concussed. Whiskers was gone, in none of its usual hiding places. I immediately suspected the worst. The project thus must be suspended for now. I am leaving up the usual mirrored coverings we use to keep the anthropoidic void sealed. Oops! I've done my best to lock up everything on such short notice. It is a hasty fix, but it will require some time to find a more permanent remedy. I'm honestly hoping you do not find this note, as I intend to lock the house down too. I intend to race off to you to retrieve your lockbox keys. Do not worry about William's key. It and the rest of his equipment is almost certainly deep within Whiskers now. Oh. I pray you do not enter this room. No matter how it may appear, William cannot be helped, and is only being kept alive as a means of continuing predation on the rest of us. I will say once again, no matter what state you may encounter William in, he cannot be helped. I have sympathy for the young man, I truly do, but I found on his person several photos of his late sister, which would imply certain risks he knew he was taking. Our extant research materials have now become possible liabilities, either criminal or professional in nature, so I have stashed them away. I believe I let you all know how I might do this if we were ever to experience an event such as this. I hope you all remember what I told you. So long then, Dr. H. Beyond the door in the room, the cage was hidden, concealed in another cloak of inward-facing mirrors. A hidden cage lined with mirrors. It is strange, almost poetic, the elaborate fantasy of self-reflection, concealment, captivity. Tarp. At the cage, she finally cast her spell. But it was confusing, she confided at first. She took the magic doll, the magic glue, and the photo of her grandpa, and she combined them, and she wished very hard. I can only assume in this fantasy that next her wish would come true, and what child's story would it not? She put Grandpa in the cage, assuming that was part of the ritual. She was not clear on how it worked. What precise instructions she could glean from her grandfather's magic book was complicated by her reading comprehension. She wished with all her heart, and then she told me she waited a while for something, anything to happen, and after that time she began to cry. I cried really hard, she said. I wanted Grandpa to be back. I wanted my parents to stop being so mean. And it hurt me. It heard me wish for Grandpa to come back, for my parents to be different. I could feel it through the walls, and it felt me through the air. I asked her what exactly she meant. She could only repeat what she said. By this time, lunch was almost over. I said goodbye to Adrian and she left to rejoin her class. Okay, I'm thinking like school counselor. I was left to consider our conversation. I believe the storytelling strategy I have employed was not unfruitful, but I must probe deeper if I can. Although I can be sure of nothing I interpret, the impressions I get may begin to help me get an idea of the right questions to ask. Knowledge you acquired this week has given you access to certain topics or keywords you can discuss with Grandpa. Wish. Consider discussing this when Grandpa emerges. You've also gained shell. Okay. I met again with Adrian in order to address her emotional outbursts in the past few weeks. It's our second time meeting, and while it is standard practice to have multiple sessions with a troubled student, as I assemble a report for the counseling department, I could not help but think, as we sat down in my office, that Adrian already seemed to show a remarkable change in self-esteem and confidence, and perhaps my and Mrs. Richardson's estimation of her as emotionally disturbed was erroneous. The paralyzing shyness and withdrawn attitude Adrian possessed last week was not entirely diminished, but she seemed to hold herself differently this week. However, this only lasted as long as our conversation pertained to initial introductory pleasantries. When I began asking once again about her parents, her feelings regarding her new school, and her new home, she quickly lost what new confidence she had gathered up and withdrew again into herself. So once again I partook in some collaborative make-believe, but this time I was aided by the fact that I had managed to do some research into Adrian's grandfather, and I had some insight into what she might actually be finding in the basement. Now, this may be overstepping my bounds some as a school counseling caseworker. Okay. But this was all in the service of making Adrian comfortable and happy in this learning environment. In any case, I was able to dig up information regarding the grandfather by inquiring at the university in town. Not that I make it a habit of sleuthing, but I had a suspicion the grandfather was a professor there, or at least some sort of researcher, due to the fact that the newly constructed lab on the campus I drive by every day bears his name in memorial. He was some sort of anthropologist, or linguist, or neuroscientist. I did not have to dig that deep before the scope of his work became dizzying, and I ran up against the limits of my undergraduate education. But back to the make-believe. What's your grandpa like? Is he a smart man? Not anymore, but I'm teaching him. So he's grown a good deal then? You've been feeding him well? Yeah, he's getting bigger, but he has a lot of room in his cage. He's still behind the bars? Yeah, well, he might be able to climb out eventually. There's this vent in the ceiling. Well, perhaps if he climbs out, I could meet him someday. Yeah, maybe. But he's not ready to leave. He can't take care of himself. I have to feed him, pick up after him. Ah, you store the food in your lunchbox? That's nice of you to share. He can almost talk. You cannot speak with him? He doesn't have a mouth, sort of. But how do you feed him? He has a mouth on the outside, on his shell, or the stuff that's his skin. I'm a little confused. Maybe you can go through a typical day with your grandpa. Okay. I asked her to explain how exactly she goes about growing her grandpa, and Adrian began another tale. According to Adrian, in the week that had passed, much had changed in the basement. Oh no, Whiskers is gone! I'm assuming that was Whiskers anyway. I should go see Grandpa first. It was scary at first, she said. The way he moved, the way the doll's skin covered him. I wanted to interject, this somehow seemed inappropriate, but I kept listening. When I look at him, she continued, when I think about him, he grows and moves. It's like he's growing for me. So he's growing bigger now, I asked. Yes, she said, bigger every day. This begins the actual growing part of growing your grandpa. Beneath the doll's burlap skin, the follicles knit together what resembles a proper person. Your grandpa. You are in charge of its cognitive development and diet until it's able to sustain itself. Currently, you are observing Grandpa. Please click the arrow back button below for a brief tutorial of your duties as caretaker. Go to Grandpa, go to study corner, go to kitchen corner, help, save, and exit. I have to feed him and teach him to speak. Okay, in the study corner I can pick up the documents again. Ritual behavior with the sample, trading, bargaining will result in dismissal from the project. The precise mechanism of the exchange of symbols and gifts required for a requested desirous yield is not known, and even then anecdotal accounts of success are illegible and end in violent death. Alright. All clean. Cashews! Yay! Grandpa might like this. It was said to pass from one family of steppe people to another, but pressed on its ultimate origin, illegible somewhere to the south, coiled in a bowl covered in incantations, buried upside down by a graveyard, a common late antiquity demon trap. The keeper, an elderly man in failing health, was ready to expound on and on about the dangers of the organism, but when I asked more pointed questions about the history of its acquisition, I was given curt responses that had a way of circling back to vague warnings. Vocab card, Grandpa. Okay. All clean. To my colleagues, I don't mean to be overly severe in tone, but Dr. Hart's work is very important, and the material we are working with is potentially very dangerous. I will be handing out a copy of this note as a reminder to everyone. I'm not trying to single out any particular person. We all have misconceptions about the nature of this project from time to time. With that out of the way, here are some things to keep in mind. The active growth must be thoroughly terminated via the correct procedures at the very least 4 weeks after dormancy is interrupted. It doesn't matter what you've done or haven't done regarding tests or procedures, or how much the anthropoidic vacuum has been disrupted, we are not ready to go beyond 4 weeks at this point. A step-by-step guide to termination has been posted by the enclosure wall. Please, please, please do not place the educational posters over this posting. Do not disrupt the anthropoidic vacuum without Dr. Hart's prior consultation and approval. In case of any emergency where the vacuum is disrupted, put on your equipment and begin the lockdown procedure. Make an extensive note of when and how the breach occurred. If you find the habitat empty, page Dr. Hart immediately, but do not attempt to speak with anyone else. This thing can get very smart. I'm sure you're all well aware from the stories we heard on our acquisition trip. The greatest caution should be used when dealing with a potential aggressive mimicry scenario. Please seek me out if you have any more questions. Biohazard bin! Notation regarding sample exoskeletons. Each growth from a cycle does not require a shell, but you may find the sample will often try to seize on something somewhat flexible it can grow into, along with any desirous yield it may generate, or else it will move from one shell to the next as it outgrows them. In the small amount of time I have spent with it in preparation, I have noticed it tends toward human forms. However, we should keep a tight lid on the anthropoidic seal in order to be cautious before we begin to experiment with exposing it long-term to anthropoid stimuli. Lettuce! A banana! I don't have any unappealing items. Okay. Feed, Grandpa. Sure. Via induction of your unprotected insula, Grandpa has simulated the production of tooth enamel to mimic a human mouth. It will need to feed through this in order to properly learn and grow. Before Grandpa can be fed, it must judge the food by smell. Hover your hand above Grandpa's olfactory bulbs. If Grandpa is pleased, it will allow you to feed it. Most foods Grandpa will accept. However, getting Grandpa to consume other things requires some culinary deception. When Grandpa is willing to be fed, hover your hand over its mouth and click. Grandpa will then consume the food. Good luck! Click on Grandpa's nostrils, left of its mouth. I'm gonna start with the banana. I think that'll go bad first. He seems indifferent, but he'll accept it. And I'm gonna do the lettuce, because I feel like that will go bad before the cashews. I don't know if things expire. Okay. Teach, Grandpa. Yes. I feel like I'm not doing this right. Oh no, I'm doing okay. Deep within Grandpa, strange membranes phonate confidently. Usual trouble with articulation, voice thin and raspy, possibly underdeveloped larynx. We've done several sessions of what we are calling familial relation simulation. I and a coworker sit in chairs opposite the enclosure. We are wearing the usual masks, and we begin to act out a scene mostly through improv that might roughly resemble a kitchen table conversation between immediate family. Repeated trials would reveal, although our simulated conversation was purposefully vague and unspecific regarding persons and identities, we would only address each other as brother, father, sister, etc. It soon became apparent the encoded information and associations we unconsciously drawn upon when hearing and speaking these words was being picked up on by Whiskers and its psi-type field of reception interpretation of brain-mind events semantic content. My co-researcher William noticed this in a simulation where Whiskers was given a role as a sister and he as a brother. I was the father. Whiskers began responding to certain prompts with unusual specificity, as well as a general pattern and timbre of speech that continued with unusual consistency. As soon as the simulation ended and we left the enclosure area, William let me know that Whiskers was almost certainly drawing from encoded memories of his late sister. Mapping out exactly what regions and centers of neural activity are intercepted by the psi-type field will take extensive neuroimaging that we do not have at this site. Currently, we only have less precise portable equipment. However, our experiences so far are eerily in line with folk knowledge and folk explanations regarding the being's access to desires, and we can begin to infer it has access to certain portions of the limbic system and the ventral temporal cortex. Okay. Blue breeze. Before we began, he had us all cover our faces completely. An earthenware pot was illegible, and on the inside, as we stole brief glances at it, we could see the interior was inlaid with mirrors. The illegible gave it small pieces of dough, spoiled food, chicken feed, illegible, keeping it content. The keeper gestured toward the small bag where the food composted and told us to be careful not to feed it any meat. I asked if the rotten food was enough to sustain it, how it might get nutrients from any of this. The keeper regarded me seriously and said it did not matter what it was fed. The act of feeding itself was what mattered. The act of feeding flesh is another act, however. He then gave me another series of grave warnings regarding not keeping any animal-derived foods near where I might be keeping it. What have I fed him so far? Lettuce and a banana? Okay. Alright, that's locked. Full of radiographic images. Fiberglass insulation. This really isn't food. Grandpa might eat it, however. Bulbous growth. Something appears to be growing from the wall. A pulsating sac, the slimy membrane that is its skin seems to contain something. Might be able to be opened with a blade. Corroded battery. This isn't really food. Grandpa might eat it, though. Ah! Vocab card. Cool. The researcher will seal off the enclosure bars, ensuring minimal gas leakage during the later fumigating process, and then retrieve the burn barrel and place it near the enclosure. Allow 48 hours of time where the current growth cycle experiences no human-related stimuli. Do not enter the enclosure area nor any part of the basement. Ideally, you will not be on the grounds at all. After 48 hours, 2 researchers will enter the basement wearing their assigned mirror mask, mirror apron, and powered air-purifying respirator. The researcher will use the vent system to fumigate the enclosure area, wait 30 minutes, then use the fan system to ventilate the enclosure. Keep the fans running during steps 3 through 4. Re-enter the enclosure area wearing your assigned mirror masks and aprons. The organism may or may not be in complete dormancy. If it is not in full dormancy, be assured that its capacity to act against you will be greatly diminished. With your assigned powered drills, quickly remove any enclosure bars needed to access the organism. Put them aside later for reinstallation. Put the organism into the burn barrel. Incinerate the organism thoroughly. Wait for any smoke to be properly cleared by the fan system. Turn off the fans. One researcher will retrieve the nucleus from the ash and place it in the mirror box. The other will sift through the ash and place any other substantial remains in the biohazard bin. in the room outside of the enclosure area. This bin is locked for safety purposes. The code is 323245. The researchers will fill out a termination form and leave it for Dr. Hart. And the radiographs. Day 19 after dormancy. Day 0 after dormancy. Day 14 after dormancy. Day 10. The human participant was asked to think of someone in the popular consciousness, fictional or not, and cogitate? Like, cogitate? I don't know. So many of these words I've seen in, like, scientific papers and never heard out loud. On their image, personality, face if possible, our participant chose Jesus of Nazareth. And with weekly repeated exposures to the participant's imaginings, propagation number 21 began forming what resembled an anthropoid Nazarene in the fold of its spines. The desirous yield is not actually the replica of a person, but a replica of the fiction of a person generated in the mind of another. That's terrifying. I'm gonna, end the week here and pick this up in the next one, because I've been recording for about 50 minutes. So thank you everybody so much for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!